Is that normal? That feels pretty extreme.
It's pretty normal.
Wow.
People are suffering. And when I post about this on Instagram or TikTok, I get thousands and thousands of messages of women saying to me, I've had exactly the same. I would wake up in the middle of the night. I would think my house was burning down. I was running around the house. I had one woman tell me she was afraid to take a bath upstairs because she was convinced that the house would come crashing down. I mean, all of these thoughts that were just irrational.
Welcome to Seacoast Stories, a weekly podcast where we interview the people and businesses of New Hampshire and Maine. I'm Troy Farkas. I produced some of the most popular podcasts in the world, and since moving to the Seacoast in 2023, I've fallen in love with the area and its inspiring people. And now I'm on a mission to bring the Seacoast closer together, one podcast at a time. Today marks the first episode of our second annual celebration of Women's History Month, where I'll talk to a star-studded cast of female business owners, artists, nonprofit leaders, and more. Highlighting the inspiring women of the Seacoast has been a priority of this show since day one, and given the current state of world affairs, it feels extra important this March. And I'm so proud to announce that this month's slate of episodes is presented to you by the most popular podcast guest of 2025, business coach Jennifer Wilder. First up in this month's series is a powerhouse of a woman. Dr. Noor Al-Humaidhi is arguably the leading voice when it comes to women's wellness on the Seacoast. Her area of expertise? Menopause. Not necessarily my wheelhouse, nor was it in the wheelhouse of the entire medical industry until very recently. More on that later from Dr. Noor, but thanks to pioneers like her, women are finally getting the help that they need. To her 126,000 followers on Instagram, the Exeter-based Dr. Noor regularly posts videos about menopause, perimenopause, estrogen, hormone replacement therapy, or HRT, and many other big scientific words that I don't understand. And through her very quickly growing business, Lifestyles By Noor, she helps women on the Seacoast get back to feeling like themselves, deviating from the medical system's previous approach of making women feel like they are going crazy. In fact, Dr. Noor was one of those women. A few years after moving to the Seacoast full-time in 2017, Dr. Noor began battling her own health issues that she couldn't quite name. And it's that very experience that inspired her to start her own business, which you will hear about very soon. Before settling here for good, however, Dr. Noor lived quite the life. She studied medicine, first in Ireland and then in the United Kingdom. In her childhood years, she bounced back and forth between her mother's hometown of Hampton, New Hampshire, and her dad's home country of Kuwait, a very small country in the Middle East. She spent most of her summers on the Seacoast, but many of her critical childhood years in Kuwait. She mainly spoke Arabic in her household, and as a Muslim, she observed Ramadan very strictly. But she tells me that, all in all, she had a wonderful childhood filled with a big loving family and a great education. However, this was the 80s and 90s, and while life was great within Noor's four walls, on the outside, it was a different story. And that is where today's story begins.
So if you don't know what happened, in 1990, on 2nd of August, 1990, Iraq invaded Kuwait. Now, this had been a bubbling undercurrent of political tension that had been going on, for many, 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 many years historically. And at the time, Saddam Hussein was the leader of Iraq, and this he had been making threats for a long time. We were actually here, so it was August 2nd, so it was the summer. We were here with my mom and my siblings. At the time, my mom did have a home here, but it was rented, so we were renting a house. And I remember the phone ringing in the middle of the night. I was 7, and the phone ringing in the middle of the night, and my mother jumping out of bed and running and turning on the TV. And I remember getting up and walking into the living room and saying, Mommy, what's wrong? And she said, Iraq invaded Kuwait. And I remember saying, what does invaded mean? And then we were stuck. We were essentially, we were stuck. We were refugees. There was no way for us to go back to Kuwait. Kuwait was under siege. It was invaded. My father and all my extended family were in Kuwait at the time. My dad then went into Saudi Arabia, and they formed like a proxy government of Kuwait in Saudi Arabia to try to figure out how to obviously overcome. And my dad was there, so he was out of Kuwait at the time. But my grandmother and my aunts and my uncles, all of them were living in Kuwait.
Wow.
Yeah.
And I'm sure you were having conversations with them over the phone.
Very difficult to communicate with. One of my cousins had come with us for the summer. So I remember we used to have, these old fax machines. And I remember we would take turns and we would hit the redial button. So we would all have turns, and one kid at a time for whatever, an hour, would sit and just redial and redial until we could get through and speak to somebody, at the very least his family.
Okay, this is before my time. When you say redial on a fax machine, what do you mean?
So, on the phone, on a phone where there would be a redial button.
Yeah.
So it wouldn't work. You would hang up and you would hit, redial, and it would dial the same number.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. You don't know what that is?
No, I had no idea. I'm showing how youthful I am. So when you were able to get a hold of them, what were they going through?
Kuwait was under siege, so they were occupied. They were in occupied territory. So the whole of Kuwait was under the control of the Iraqi military. So, they had difficulty getting food. They had difficulty getting medication. They, hid things in their home because they were routinely raided for whether that was jewelry or anything that was of any value that could be taken and sold. And there was an underground whole resistance movement that my, uncles were involved in. So it was a really dangerous time. And those people were, captured and tortured and assassinated pretty routinely.
And what was Iraq's reasoning for doing this?
They believed that Kuwait was always part of Iraq. And geographically, the location of Kuwait at the top of the Gulf is very, very, very strategic.
So you're in the U.S. when this is happening. And what are you feeling? I mean, how hard is this for you to know that? Because I imagine a part of you is probably like, I wish I could be there with them, but also I'm glad I'm here.
I know. And being 7 years old and not really understanding, I understood, and we could see it on TV at the time. The 6 o'clock news would come on and you would see, jets and bombs and tanks. But, how much of that did I really understand? I knew I was scared and there was a sadness and we couldn't go home. But I don't know that I fully understood what was happening. But what happened is because our house was rented, the house that my mother owned, we had nowhere to go. So we ended up moving in with my aunt and uncle and their 4 children. And my mother had 5 children in a 4-bedroom house. So we moved to Litchfield, New Hampshire, to a house that was across the street at the time from the elementary school. And a whole bunch of us lived in this small house that didn't really fit us. And it was, my mother talks about it was an interesting time cooking for all of those people, clipping coupons. I remember clipping coupons, and trying to feed all of these people. My mother got a job at UNH. My mother is a professor of biochemistry. And she got a job as a research technician just so that she could have some income and we could maybe have healthcare. And we went to school and they tried to create an environment that was normal for us while all of this chaos was happening. Yeah.
And so I believe it's in 1991, the United States intervenes, Operation Desert Storm. That's their attempt to liberate Kuwait from Iraqi control, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
So it was a group of countries, allies that Operation Desert Storm, and their hope was which was launched in January of 2026, January of 1991, and the hope was that they would have Kuwait liberated by the 25th of February, because that's Kuwait National Day. But it was actually the 26th of February, the day after. They were a day late.
Messed up again.
But I remember, Operation Desert Storm, and when that launched, watching that on, being very little, and that my parents and my aunt and uncle not wanting us to come and look at the TV because it was, missiles and bombs. And, we know this was our home. We knew what was happening and being really terrified and sad. And I remember I was in 3rd grade going to school the next day and just not being able to, I just would, I remember going to the library because I didn't know what else. What else? I was just so sad, but maybe reason in a way that I didn't fully understand, but it was tough.
Yeah. How did your parents explain to you what was happening?
I think they tried to explain it the best that they could. That, like I said, I asked my mother what the word invaded meant because I didn't even know that. And I think they tried their best to explain that that it's going to be okay. Our family was going to be, I think they were just trying to be reassuring to the best of their ability. It's hard to explain war to a child.
Of course. Yeah. Okay. So the Operation Desert Storm is a success.
Mm-hmm.
When are you able to go back?
So after the liberation, my cousin's family came and they stayed with us for a little while. And then we stayed until the summer. So my mother wanted us to finish school. So I stayed until the end of third grade. And then the other...
In New Hampshire until the end of third grade.
Until the end of third grade. And the other complicating factor was that, in their retreat, they had set fire. The Iraqis in their retreat had set fire to all the oil wells. So there was a huge issue with basically fire and
oh my
smoke.
gosh.
Do you know about that?
Yeah.
Look it up on YouTube.
Wow.
But they set fire in their retreat to all the oil wells. So there was heavy, heavy smoke and smog in Kuwait for many months. It took them to get that under control. So my parents were a little bit worried about bringing us to Kuwait. But we did get back to Kuwait towards the end of that summer of 91. And I remember we used to wear gas masks. We used to get up in the morning and look out the window. And if you could see the communication tower, you didn't have to wear your gas mask. But if you couldn't see the communication tower, you had to wear your mask.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
That's wild.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. August of 91. And then how different was life pre-occupation and post-occupation?
So our house had been ransacked, essentially, and was left empty, doors open. And so I remember going back and being in our home, and we had, a desk, and you would open the desk and there would be in my bedroom, and there would be a whisk in it. But what happened was the house was just turned completely upside down. And when my uncles went to try to kind of put it in some sort of shape that we would be able to come back to, everything was just put into every drawer that they could find. So it took a while for us to kind of reestablish, where everything went and just feel comfortable in our home again, because it had been essentially ransacked and everything was taken. And then, there's a before and after of the war. After the war, they talk about, Kuwait became a lot more westernized. We had, very heavy military presence, which really continues to this day, but much more at that time. And so it was, a lot more people were English speaking. There were a lot more expatriates that lived in Kuwait. So it kind of changed the demographic of the population.
All right. So you continue growing up there. At what point is little Noor thinking about what she wants to do with the rest of her life?
People ask me that question a lot, and they say, oh, so when did you decide to be a doctor? As if there's some sort of romantic story.
Yeah.
And I actually don't know, and I don't remember, and I don't think I ever really wanted to be a doctor. But I remember I was top of my class, did all the APs and got, I just was very bright at school. And that was the next, oh, okay, you're bright at school, so you become a doctor. And maybe around the time I was 16, whatever, people were talking to me and telling me this, that eventually you adopt that reality. And I was going to be a doctor. And that's kind of the trajectory I ended up on. And we went, my mom and dad, we toured a whole bunch of medical schools, both in the UK and Ireland, as well as in the US. And I applied everywhere. And I was accepted in a number of places, but at the Royal College of Surgeons in Ireland, in Dublin, Ireland. And I then was awarded a scholarship to attend.
Oh, wow. All right. So you end up going to Ireland for medical school.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, completely different than the U.S. system, I'm sure. When your first day of school, what kind of system are you walking into?
So in the U.S., when you want to become a doctor, you do an undergrad bachelor's degree in something that is remotely scientific. And then you apply for medical school, which is an additional 4 years. And the way they do it in Europe is that you are accepted directly into medical school, and you do either a 5 or a 6 year program. And I was accepted into a 6-year program at RCSI. So with the first year was very basic science, and then you were more into the medical school. So you did your preclinical years and then clinical years over the course of 5 years. And the difference between the way things are, especially in the UK and Ireland versus the US or in Kuwait, or the more American system, is that in the American system, you do a lot of cumulative work. So you do a lot of testing every couple of weeks, and that kind of works to kind of accumulate over time. Whereas in the UK and Irish system, you attend classes and do all the things, but then everything rests on this big exam at the end of 18 months, whatever it is. So we would have first professional exams, which was the first 18 months. Then we had second professional exams, which was the second 18 months. And then we had our final exams. So we, had 3 kind of groups of big exams throughout our 5-year training essentially in medicine, which is very different than anywhere else. And it's hard. People, unless you're a good test taker, it's pretty hard to shine.
Right. What was being a college kid in Dublin like?
It was so fun.
Yeah?
Yeah.
I'm sure
Dublin is so fun.
Yeah.
I had a blast. You have your ups and downs. It was hard, and that was during the time, that 6 years when my sister passed away. So that was, we had our ups and downs, but I love Dublin.
Yeah.
And my husband's from Northern Ireland, so we get back to Ireland a lot.
Big rivalry.
I love Ireland.
Yeah.
It's so fun. People are so friendly.
Yeah.
It's a great place.
Galway is my favorite place in the world. I just have so much fun dancing to live Irish music in a pub with maybe a Guinness.
And that, the west coast of Ireland is, so rugged and beautiful, and the Ring of Kerry and Connemara. It's just stunning.
Yeah.
There are not a lot of places like that.
No.
Feels like a ferry is going to appear out of nowhere.
I know, seriously. Yeah. It's amazing. So, all right, you study in Ireland and then you go on to study in London, right? To continue this doctor career that you didn't want to have.
So I graduated medicine, and I had initially my plan had been to match into a residency program in the U.S. And if you're not familiar with that, when you apply out of medical school, whether it's in the U.S. or wherever, you go through a process called a match, where you apply for whatever specialty you want, wherever you want, and then you go through a series of interviews, and it's all, very, you're kind of matched by the computer essentially, and it's called the match. And then you find out about your match one day. Everybody finds out. It's really stressful. So I had plans to match into a residency in the US. But between all of that, I had met my husband. And my husband at the time he's from Northern Ireland, but was living in London. And he's a researcher. He has a PhD in developmental biology, and ran a research group at University College London. So I graduated in Dublin, ended up doing 1 year of internship. And then we made the decision that I would move to London. So I moved to London. And even though I had an EU qualification, I'm not an EU citizen. So they wouldn't accept, because of my citizenship, they wouldn't accept my training. So I had to do a series of exams called the PLABs, which are like medical licensing exams in the UK. And in between all of that, I wanted to kind of explore other options. So I applied and got on a degree at Queen Mary University of London doing medical law and ethics, which I loved. And I did that for 18 months. And I graduated with distinction. I loved doing medical law. And actually, I then applied to do a conversion at the College of Law in London, and got on a conversion degree to do a law degree, and kind of teetered back and forth. At that point, we were married, and really, I couldn't really I would stay in school forever. I love being in school. I love reading, and I just like, if you can I can study for the rest of my life, I would. But we decided I had to be a grown-up. And so I had to go back, I had to go back and work. At that point, I had taken those exams. So I had a medical license in London, and was able to kind of weasel my way into a job so that I could then apply for residency.
Amazing. So the UK medical system, different from the US medical system, of course. The UK is medical system run by the NHS.
National Health Service. Yep.
Yes. Can you explain just to the audience who may not be familiar how that system works?
Yeah. So it's a nationalized health service. So it's basically run by the government, and it's free at the point of care. So you pay for it through your taxes, basically. So there's no exchange of money at the time that you deliver care. So it's run by the Department of Health, and then subsequently all the counties have their own sort of small small Department of Health, essentially, that runs all the hospitals. So there's pros and cons. There's pros that everybody has access. And then the cons were that it was a lot of people. And so we saw, and that's, I think, one of the things in retrospect that has been a positive for me, was I've seen a lot of pathology.
Yeah. When I was living in London, I got hit by a car.
Oh my goodness.
Like not just a car, like a big yellow DHL van speeding around a corner. I got walking in a crosswalk. 4 p.m. rush hour in West London. I had just left my flat, and I get hit in this crosswalk, and one person stops to check on me if I'm okay. And the driver was yelling at me, like, after he's hit me, like, what are you doing walking? I'm like, I had the right of way, whatever. Meanwhile, I'm like,
oh my God, were you hurt?
On the ground. Miraculously, no. I mean, I was all scraped up, of course,
wow.
but I go back to my apartment, like limp back to my apartment, I got the guy's like contact info because I don't know how this system works here, but I'll just get your contact info and we'll figure it out later. Send him a message. Never responded to me. Great. There were a bunch of businesses in the area, probably with security footage. Couldn't get the security footage, so nothing ever came of it. I didn't know really what the medical system was like here. Can I go to the doctors here? Can I not go to the doctors here? How's this going to work? So I buy travel insurance like right then and there. And then, okay, I feel fine right now, but am I just hopped up on adrenaline? I wait a few days. How am I feeling? My leg's kind of hurting, bashes into my left leg. So I go to the emergency room after doing some research, and I see a doctor for 10 minutes. We may have run x-rays, and then I think they went over them with me. Totally fine. Miraculously, I have no idea because that thing rocked
You're
me
so
dead center.
lucky.
Very lucky. And then I walked out. I just walked out.
Yeah. Nobody asked you for payment.
No, I went up to the desk and like, what are you doing?
It's done. You're all dead. Yeah.
It was wild.
I know it is wild. And that's something that was so hard for me to get used to when I moved here was the fee-based care. It's just not something that I had a hard time with it. A really
Making
hard
the adjustment.
time.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Just like as a concept, the fact that here you have to have that whole conversation at the end. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And I could tell you about that, but like I was scolded because I was undercoding. And so people were getting undercharged. And I was like scolded.
Wow. Yeah.
But I did it on purpose. I was feeling I just couldn't get my head around it.
How rebellious of you. Wow. Okay. All right. So when you say that you were seeing a lot of patients, I mean, these are very short visits that you're having at the NHS, right?
Yeah.
All kinds of problems?
In general practice, we would see patients every 10 minutes. Sometimes every 7 minutes or sometimes every 5 minutes if they were acute visits. And you would see anything. It could be anything. And so we did that. You would do that for a couple of hours in the morning. Then we would go out and visit patients. So then we would have home visits to do. So you would go out and visit some patients at home. So they were, people that couldn't get out, or they were older people, or sometimes we would round at nursing homes. And then you would come back and do your afternoon clinic. And then some days I would then go home, and then I would go out into our what we called our out of hours service. And the people would call in, they would be triaged on the phone, and then a doctor would speak to them if that's what the outcome of the triage was. And they would you would treat them over the phone, you would send them to one of our clinics to be seen in person, which were open through the night, or you would send a doctor out to visit them through the night. So I would go and do that, and I would triage. And I remember we used to have these competitions of how many patients you could talk to in like whatever number of, so we would aim for, if you could talk to 6 patients at least an hour, ideally more. So you're like getting through these things and you're documenting in between all of this. So I would do that, and I love to, if I did overnights, I would love to go out visiting. So you would go out visiting in one of the heart surgeon care cars, and you were fully loaded. You had everything that you needed, whether it was resuscitation equipment, medication on the car, and you had a driver. And a lot of times the drivers were like retired cops and things like that. And you would go out all night and you would visit patients.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
So back when you're in the hospital setting, in those 5-minute consultations, what conversation is happening?
It's interesting, and it all comes down to your ability to communicate. And one of the things that the big part of training in general practice in the UK is effective communication. And you can communicate a lot in 10 minutes if you control the narrative and help to draw out why the patient is there. So you can, with a little bit of training, you can generally get something to the end in 10 minutes to where you need to be with a satisfied patient and a satisfied provider. But we were trained to do that. It's a skill.
So are you a fan of that system or no?
I'm a fan of a nationalized health system.
Yeah.
I don't think that it is, I think, healthcare is a human right. So it's better than the system that we have now, which is multi-tiered, which a huge swathe of the population cannot access. And that's not okay.
Yeah. Do you think we ever get to that in the US?
I don't know. I hope so.
I would hope so too. I've literally considered, I had a hip problem a couple years ago, and I was like, you know what? I'm on vacation in Norway right now. I might just stop by, get myself seen there. Which is crazy.
Norway is awesome healthcare.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, they do. Coming up, why women's health is so under-researched. Plus, Dr. Noor's own health scare that inspires her to start her business. That's in a moment. But ladies, if you're a woman building something serious, this one's for you. This month's presenting sponsor is dear friend of the show, Jennifer Wilder. She's not just a business coach who has read a few Tony Robbins books. Jen is the founder and CEO of multiple seven-figure hospitality brands like Laney & Lou and Ginger Fox Baking. Real businesses with real teams, real payroll, and real complexities. In her decade plus of entrepreneurship, Jen has built unbelievable products, which I love, by the way, rock-solid cultures and category-defining brands. And now she's advising women who are looking to do the same. Jen works with women who are building serious companies, founders whose revenue is growing, but the profit, systems, team stability, and mental health just aren't keeping pace. And this is where Jen thrives, because she's lived it herself. I know you think you do, but you don't have to do this alone. When you work one-on-one with Jen, she'll help you not only with the business strategy, of course, but also with you and your mindset. Because if you aren't operating at your very best, your business is going to feel it. And these aren't performative masterminds that she takes you through. These sessions are intimate. Depth is shared, courage is built, and profit is increased because the structure gets fixed. If everything that I just said hit the spot more than a Ginger Fox croissant on a Saturday morning does, then listen closely. Jen offers continuous business coaching for women like you. That's option one. Option two, if you want to join a room full of other visionary Seacoast women, then Jen is also hosting the Altitude Salon on April 21st, a one-day CEO council for an intentionally curated group of women who are actively scaling and carrying meaningful responsibility inside their companies. If either of these call to you, continuous one-on-one work and or a day at the Altitude Salon, then you can visit thejenniferwilder.com/Seacoast stories to get $100 off her private advisory package or your seat at the table at the Altitude Salon. Again, just visit thejenniferwilder.com/Seacoast stories to lock in your deal. Speaking of badass female business owners on the Seacoast, past podcast guest Tanya Hart is a force to be reckoned with. She's got multiple businesses we love, like Oomph Salon, that gem tucked into the West End, where you go to look like you have your life together. If you walk upstairs, though, and I mean literally upstairs, you'll find Ash Alchemy Spa. And this is where you go to actually get your life together. Speaking from personal experience here. Ash Alchemy is an award-winning holistic spa focused on restoration, healing, and intentional self-care. They've been voted best massage in the Portsmouth region multiple years in a row. We're talking therapeutic massage, facials, energy-based treatments, everything that will make you feel all warm and fuzzy before hitting the town for, say, Seacoast Stories Dinner Club. I've gotten a lovely Reiki-infused massage there, and I think it's about time I book another one. Ash Alchemy smells amazing, the vibes are locked in, and the staff is filled with genuinely kind humans who make you feel like you're not just another appointment on the calendar. If you need some winter maintenance or a full nervous system reboot, Ash Alchemy is the spot. Check out all their offerings at ashalchemy.co. I think you had told me prior to this conversation today that a lot of the reasons people ended up coming to see you was women, and they were navigating some type of women's health issues. What were some of the issues that women were coming to you with?
Yeah. So, I've been, I graduated general practice from my residency in 2013. So I've been doing general practice for 13 years. I've been, a doctor for 20. It's our 20-year reunion this summer, which is crazy to think. I know. It's like I feel aged. But so throughout my career, we had, women would come and they had complaints that I couldn't really help them with. I had no tools. And one of my trainers or my mentors during my training, he used to call them heart sync patients. And, before, when I was in training, you would go through your list for the day and, they would go, oh, so-and-so, oh, I know that, just to kind of prep you for the day. And they would say, that's a heart sync patient. And it meaning like you saw the name and your heart sank because you couldn't help them. Now on reflection, those women were in perimenopause and menopause. And because of the science where it was at the time, and we could talk about that if you want to, there was a generally accepted belief that treating women with hormones in perimenopause and menopause was dangerous.
Why dangerous?
So that's a whole conversation. But there was up until the late 90s, it was pretty well established in the medical community that hormone therapy for perimenopause women was beneficial. It decreased their risk of heart disease. It decreased the risk of UTIs. It decreased their risk of fracture. Then the NIH got involved in the late 90s, and they formed a study called the Women's Health Initiative, the WHI. And in the WHI, I'm not going to tell you the whole story of that, but they called a press conference in 2002 and said that hormone therapy causes breast cancer. Now, the data does not show that hormone therapy causes breast cancer, but that's what was said out loud. And it was carried by all the media, all the breakfast, all the, Good Morning America, all of it, the Today Show, the cover of Time and Newsweek, the cover of all the big, USA Today and the Washington. It was basically, it became part of what everybody believed. It was like in the water. And that was in 2002. I was in medical school then. Really, that's not what the data shows. It does not show an increased risk of breast cancer, but that's what the belief is, and still held. If you go out into the community now and you stop somebody in the street and say, "What do you think of hormone therapy?" They'll say, "Causes breast cancer."
Really?
It's become like a part of the lore, and so that's what we believe. So we thought we couldn't give these people HRT; that we were going to harm them, we were going to kill them. And then what happened was I was now here as a family physician, and COVID happened. So this is 2020. So March of 2020,
you
COVID
moved to
happened.
the U.S. in 2017.
We moved to the U.S. Yeah, we can go back to that if you want to. So COVID happened in 2020, and I was down here at Core Physicians, and they closed our office because obviously COVID, and we were trying to figure out what to do. So they closed our office, and we opened a COVID clinic at the hospital, what they called a respiratory clinic. And it was just me and another colleague that were the doctors that opened the respiratory clinic. And it was March 17th, 2020. And I remember it because it was St. Patrick's Day. And we moved here St. Patrick's Day. So this is like, with the Ireland connection. So, and we had no PPE. Like we didn't even have masks or gloves, nothing, and we opened this and following that, it was very busy. And obviously it was very scary at the beginning, what was going to happen? How were we exposed? And we ended up I got what I think was sick. I was burnt out, very anxious, couldn't sleep. And, I thought I had long COVID. I thought I had, I was anxious, I was depressed. And that kind of sent me on this journey of 18 months trying to figure out what was wrong with me. And eventually I figured out myself that what my problem was that I was perimenopausal. And
how old were you at this time?
I was 38. And so I treated myself with hormones and my symptoms went away. And that's
no breast cancer.
No breast cancer. And that sent me on this journey of, oh my goodness, everything I know is wrong. And that's a scary place to be when you in medicine, you're taught like that these deeply held beliefs about what your knowledge is of science. And when you start to question that, it's a very scary place to be. It's very lonely.
Yeah.
To kind of like go out on a limb and say, I don't think this is right. And that I ended up on every WhatsApp group that would have me. I went to every conference. I took every test. I read every book. Please, somebody talk to me. And I learned that hormone therapy does not cause breast cancer and lots of other things, that all these women could be treated safely. And we would probably improve their life and improve the quality of their life and probably the length of their life with appropriate treatment. And so I tried to do that in the setting of where I was at the time, but it was met with resistance because, again, you're out on a limb. People don't love that. So I started Lifestyles by Noor in addition to my day job on like a Friday and a Saturday morning to try to bring this care to other people.
Right.
And to see where that went.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. We'll put a pause and we'll circle back to all of that. So much to chew in there. Okay. So why, if the data didn't show it, why in the early 2000s are the experts out here saying that?
So there's a lot of debate about that. The lead investigators on the WHI really had bias. They were saying in the 90s that we need to get, stop this freight train of HRT. So there was inherent bias and they wanted to run with that. And there's some great books. There's a great book called Estrogen Matters. If anybody is listening to me and thinking, oh my goodness, this is new information, I strongly encourage you to read a book called Estrogen Matters by Avram Blooming and Carol Tavris, who unpacks all of that about what happened, how it happened. And he interviews the lead investigators and all of like, how did we get here? What happened? What went wrong? And many people speculate about whose fault it was, but the data was misrepresented.
Speaking of data, I mean, I imagine a lot of the reasoning why you kind of felt like an outcast as you started talking about menopause. Please correct me if I'm wrong. I'm not the expert here. Isn't it something like a number as low as maybe 2% of all funds for medical research in the US are allocated toward women's health?
Yes.
How is that possible?
That's a great question.
When women are half the population.
Yeah.
And the female body is so much more difficult to understand than the man's.
I know. And if you go, so PubMed, do you know what PubMed is?
No.
So PubMed is like a search engine that we use for scientific articles. And if you go into PubMed and you can search any word or series of words, and you can search, if you search erectile dysfunction, there are tens of millions of hits, right? And if you look up the word menopause, it's a fraction.
Why?
That's a great question.
Yeah.
Many people have debated that because it has not been a priority. It's like, oh, this woman, she's just old and crazy. Whereas ED, oh no, you have to be able to use your penis. We have to figure that problem out.
Of course, the important things. Okay, so in these debates, what are the people saying?
In what debates?
The debates about like why women's health was so understudied and like why is menopause not, when it's a known thing, right? It's always been a known thing.
All women are going to go through menopause if they live long
enough. Yes, it's like,
because it wasn't felt to be a priority. That's something we needed to like address and improve and fix, right? So it wasn't seen as, wait a minute, why, you're living without your hormones. That's a problem that we need to address. It was never seen like that, right? Whereas a man with low testosterone, well, that's a problem we need to address because you should have your testosterone. It was always just seen, well, this is natural. This is what happens. As opposed to, wait a minute, maybe we need to intervene. And a lot of people argue with me and say that, oh, you're medicalizing menopause. You're making menopause, this is a natural, process that happens. Well, actually, that's not true. The average age of menopause in this country is 51 and a half. So the average age that women go through menopause is 51 and a half. The average life expectancy of women 120 years ago was 49. So this business outliving our ovaries is new in the last 100 years. 100 years ago, we were not outliving our ovaries because generally we didn't live long enough. Yes, there were outliers, don't get me wrong. But in general, we did not outlive. What we've created is a situation because of sanitation and vaccines and antibiotics and low maternal mortality rates, is we've created given women an extra 30 years. But now they're living 30 years without their hormones. So we've resulted in a whole other group of chronic diseases.
Okay. That makes a lot of sense. I never really thought about it like that before. All right. So I think it's probably a good point to pause and can we just define terms here? Perimenopause, what is it?
So to define perimenopause, we need to go back to menopause. Okay. So the current definition of menopause is the point in time at which you are a year without a period. Now, that's the medical definition, which is very problematic for many reasons, because it makes it about periods, which it shouldn't be. Often there's not a lot of correlation between what's going on in your body and your periods. It also ignores the entirety of the many years before your last period, which is when women are very symptomatic and changes start to happen to their body while they're still having periods. Also, what about women that don't have periods? Like, let's say they've had a hysterectomy, or they have a Mirena IUD, or they've had an ablation. Are they in menopause? Where are they? So we have a problem with the definition. And because of the current definition of menopause, we have difficulty defining perimenopause. And that's one of the ways that doctors will gatekeep care and will say, oh, you can't have HRT because you're still having periods. So therefore, you couldn't be in menopause. Right? So I like to redefine menopause with my patients in a way, because once we redefine it, we understand biologically what's happening, we can understand how to treat it. So menopause, I redefine as the point in time at which we run out of eggs. So males and females are fundamentally different in their gonads, right? Your gonads are your testes, mine are my ovaries. In a male testicle, right at this moment, they have a form of stem cell called a germ cell. So they can make fresh new sperm every single day from now until the day they die, unless they're castrated. They have the equipment to make new sperm. We don't have that. We made all of our eggs all at once when we were a 20-week-old fetus in our mother's uterus. And that was our lifetime supply of eggs. We have no ability to make more. So menopause is when we've run out of eggs. Perimenopause is when we're running out of eggs. So we've dipped below a threshold of how many eggs we have left.
Okay. And perimenopause can start as early as when?
Yeah. So average age, we just said average age of menopause is 51 and a half, but normally we say between 45 and 55. So ages 45 to 55 to go through menopause. And perimenopause can start 12 to 15 years before that.
Wow.
So we're talking young women.
Yeah. So how do you know? What are the telltale signs that you're starting to go through perimenopause?
So there are no tests that are going to tell you that you're in perimenopause. Lab work is very unreliable in this setting because often your hormones will look normal, but that's because what we define as normal, there's a huge, wide area of what is normal, right? So I generally say if it, quacks like a duck, it's a duck. So if you're probably around the right age or maybe even postpartum and you start to have maybe symptoms of difficulty sleeping, increased anxiety, hot flashes, night sweats, low libido, vaginal dryness, you're probably in perimenopause. And, some people are, well, how can you be sure? You can't really be sure. It's a clinical diagnosis. But oftentimes I say, well, the proof is in the treatment. If I give you some hormones and you feel better, then you're in perimenopause.
Okay. So you yourself noticed that you start going through perimenopause.
Correct.
So how are you feeling on a day-to-day basis when you're going through this?
So my biggest symptoms were difficulty sleeping and anxiety and brain fog. So I had always been a champion sleeper. Like my mother would be like, my mother would say, Noor could sleep through an air raid. And I could sleep through an air raid because, okay, let me take you back. So when we went back to Kuwait, those early years of going back to Kuwait after the war, we would have air raid drills and sometimes we would be under threat. So we, the air raid sirens would go off and we would have to, go somewhere and we would have gas masks that we'd have to put on and we'd have to, we had my younger brother was a baby and he had a gas cot. So we all had to learn how to put him in the cot. Anyway, so air raid sirens and dealing with that was something that so my mother thought it was funny because Nora could sleep through an air raid, but I stopped sleeping. I could fall asleep, but then I couldn't stay asleep. So I could fall asleep and then I would wake up at 12:30 or 12 and that was it. I was wide awake. I could not sleep. And I was super anxious, so anxious and having intrusive thoughts. So I would wake up in the night and I would think that there was an intruder. I would think that there was water gushing, that the house is on fire. And I would run around the house checking on the kids. Oh my God, the house was on fire. And at one point I was convinced there was an intruder. And at 4:00 in the morning, I was standing outside of our house and my husband came out like, what are you doing? And I was convinced that there was somebody trying to break into our house. I mean, I lost my mind. It was terrifying.
Wow.
And I remember saying to my husband one day that I wanted him to take me to Portsmouth Regional Hospital so they would admit me at the behavioral health unit as I could not be alone with my thoughts. That's how scary things got. And so anxiety, difficulty sleeping, and brain fog. And I just told you, top of my class did all these exams. I could take any exam under the sun. I got it. And my brain stopped working. I couldn't even remember what happened yesterday. I couldn't remember where to pick up my kids. I was bringing my kids to the wrong place. I was picking them up at the wrong time. I was missing payments, missing mortgage payments. I mean, and I was somebody that was so on it. I could do everything. And, I say my husband didn't know anything and he didn't know anything about anything because I did everything, but that was my fault. I had created that because I can be a little controlling and I handle it all. And my husband was like, I had to just hand it all over to him because my brain would not work the way that it used to work.
Is that normal? That feels pretty extreme.
It's pretty normal.
Wow.
People are suffering.
Yeah.
And when I post about this on Instagram or TikTok, I get thousands and thousands of messages of women saying to me, I've had exactly the same. I would wake up in the middle of the night. I would think my house was burning down. I was running around the house. I was driving around. I had one woman tell me she would afraid to take a bath upstairs because she was convinced that the house would come crashing down. I mean, all of these thoughts that were just irrational.
And the government and the funding and medical system has never thought that was important.
No, they just, locked them up in the attic.
That's wild.
Think about it historically, right?
Of course.
They treated them, they put them in, if it was, I'm the sort of person maybe 100 years ago, I would have ended up in an institution.
Yeah.
All I needed was hormones.
Yeah. Wow. So you get on hormone replacement therapy and how quickly does
I
the
immediately
flip switch?
start sleeping, within days.
Really?
Start sleeping. Yeah. Within days, I'm sleeping again.
Wow.
And the anxiety starts to get better. I'm an anxious person. I think I'm kind of a little type A, so I'm a little bit anxious and that's just my nature. But within days, I had significant improvement.
All right. So you go through HRT. It works wonders for you. At what point does the light bulb go off in your head where you're like, wait, I've got something here?
Yeah. So it was more that, first of all, I was ashamed that I had kind of not treated all these women that had been coming to me into my entire career, and I didn't have tools. I was offering them antidepressants. Not that I'm against antidepressants. I think they're very useful in the appropriate setting, but, probably not for the perimenopausal female that just needs her hormones back, right? So I felt like I needed education. I realized what I didn't know, and what I didn't know was vast. And I needed to figure this out and learn what I could. So I went on this journey of learning, reading everything I could, going to every conference I could, doing every course online that I could, getting in like every WhatsApp group that would have me of women, doctors across the country that were in the same boat as me, that figuring this out, like, hang on a minute, are you seeing this? And trying to figure this out with kind of scant information. There's not a lot of data. So we have to make educated guesses on things, and that it can make people feel pretty uncomfortable.
Yeah. You, at the start of this conversation, you had said that you just became a doctor because that's what you were supposed to do. And it sounds like from our previous conversation that you just kind of went on the path because it was what you were supposed to do. But at any point, you never really were like super enthusiastic about the specific work that you're doing. This is really the first time where there's a fire under your ass.
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I'm like fired up about this.
Yeah.
You can see it like when I post on the internet. I'm fired up about this.
Why are you so fired up?
Because I've realized how badly women have been treated and essentially ignored, and their experiences belittled. And I'm not going to stand for it. Not here. Not in my presence. I'm not going to stand for it. Women need to know that this is not okay, that they don't have to live this way. We can help them. Because historically, women present with these symptoms like me and be like, oh, it's because you drink alcohol. It's because you're just like, you need to take ashwagandha. Oh, it's because you're not managing your stress. You need to do yoga. You need to do meditation. Maybe you should do breath work. And you're like, okay, maybe this is my fault. Okay, what else can I do? I'm just, but you cannot out supplement, out yoga, out breath work, losing your hormones.
So, as we said earlier, you moved to Maine in 2017, I think because you wanted to be closer to your mom. She had moved up here full time. You yourself then start working at a family practice in the York hospital system. You go over to the New Hampshire system after that. And at some point in all this, you start having the menopause conversation in your own medical circles. And it's not met with as much enthusiasm as you had for it. So then you decide that it's time to take matters into your own hands. When you came up with the concept that would become Lifestyles by Noor, what was the vision that you had?
The vision was I would keep my job, and I would see women on the side that needed help, that they weren't able to get any help elsewhere.
And was the hospital cool with this?
Yeah. So I had to ask permission, and I did get permission. So I got permission from the hospital to allow me to do this on the side, which is what I did. And then as I suddenly got significantly busier than I expected I would get, I outgrew my day and a half. So I took another day, and then eventually decided, and it's a kind of a big leap to go out on your own in medicine, as well as, taking the risk of not having that regular salary. But I decided that I knew I had enough business that I could sustain myself here and sustain me and my family. So then it kind of grew. And early days, it was just about delivering a little bit of care. And then I was trying to get the labs that I wanted to order for the patients. And I was trying to find a way that I could get bone density scans for patients. And it became clear people just did not want to. It's very clunky. Everything is clunky when you try to bring more than one service provider together. And I was like, you know what? I can do this myself. So I bought a DEXA scanner, and I negotiated my own lab rates with Cleveland Heart Lab, and we just brought it all in-house, and it's just taken off from there.
Cool.
Yeah.
Wow. You started in 2023, right?
I started in, November of 2023.
Okay. So you start late 2023. Is this revolutionary on the Seacoast at this time? No one else is doing this?
So there were some naturopaths that were doing some of this. They were doing compounded hormones, but nobody was doing, and still really isn't doing the comprehensive care that I'm bringing. So what I'm doing here is I'm bringing that kind of very evidence-based medicine out of your internal medicine office and blending that with a very holistic approach, right? And that doesn't really exist.
Yeah. So curious to know, as someone who just loves making stuff on social media, what kind of content were you putting out on your initial Instagram? Just talking.
Yeah. And, what I thought, and about, vaginal estrogen, and about hormones, and about menopause, and my own experience, and it just went.
Yeah. not really stuff you were seeing on social media.
No.
Yeah.
Mm-mm.
Yeah.
And, I have a tendency, I get fired up and people like that on Instagram.
They do. It plays well. Okay, so people locally start finding you, but also from beyond here as well, right?
Oh yeah, I see people come here from all over the country. They fly here from all over the country, and then I have a big contingent of international clients as well.
Okay, that's amazing. So it just pretty much takes off from day one.
Yeah.
Coming up, why the women and men of the Seacoast flock to Dr. Noor's office, plus an inside look into her own wellness routine. That's in a moment, but first, on this podcast, we tell stories you can relate to. And I'm sure you can relate to this because at some point, every Seacoast resident has probably had this moment. You're at home on a bright and beautiful, quintessentially Seacoast day. The windows are wide open, you're getting that perfect coastal light, and then you lock eyes with someone walking by. This used to happen to me all the time when I lived downtown, and it would temporarily stop my peaceful morning coffee dead in its tracks. Because in that moment, your living room suddenly feels less like peaceful New England charm and more like that live cam that's constantly going in Market Square. We love the light around here. We just don't need an audience while we're enjoying it. Enter our friends at Budget Blinds of the Seacoast. They're local, they come straight to your home, and they help you figure out exactly what works for your space without you wandering around Home Depot for hours because you're too stubborn to ask anyone for help, which guilty as charged. Whether you're in a Portsmouth condo, a Dover colonial, or a Maine coastal home where the sun somehow finds you at every hour of the day, Budget Blinds helps you control the light, the privacy, and the overall feel of your home. Custom blinds, shades, shutters, professionally installed, reasonably priced, and done right the first time. Budget Blinds of the Seacoast, because natural light is great. A little mystery, though, even better. So as we said, Lifestyles by Noor basically takes off from day one, so much so that you end up leaving your hospital job in April of 2025. When this business started taking off, how good did it feel knowing that after years of searching for the right pockets of the medical field, how good did it feel that you had finally found it?
So validating. I still pinch myself, and my husband, he's a wonderful man, and he'll say things like, he's like my cheerleader, and he's like, can you believe this? Like, look at this, amazing. Could you should be proud of yourself. A lot of times I'm very focused on making sure that I deliver the care that I want, and I'm so busy that it's hard for me sometimes to take a step back and say, wow, look at what's happened here. And he's somebody that reminds me to do that. And then I have other people in my life, and people will come in here and, that were with me from the start, and they'll say, I'm so proud of you. This is wonderful. But it's hard for me to do that oftentimes because I'm too busy to really step back and think about it. But, I'm really proud of myself. I'm so happy with how it's turned out.
Yeah, you should be. For as much medical experience and education as you had in all forms of medicine, you didn't really have any business experience at all, right?
Troy, I went to medical school when I was 17 years old.
Yeah.
I couldn't even work Excel. Honestly, and I still can't work Excel.
Same.
I mean, I can barely manage my email. I ask them, I'm like, I don't really know. Can you tell me, show me how to do this? I'm just not that, I'm not great at that. And still struggle because I just didn't learn it. And, how to, the QuickBooks, and it was like foreign to me. I have learned so much about how to run a business, about marketing, about, how to pay people, about health insurance, about it's crazy what you can learn when you just put your mind to it.
Yeah. What were the biggest growing pains from the business perspective when you started Lifestyles by Noor?
Hiring. It's the hardest thing. Hiring the right, finding the right team is really, really difficult. And sometimes you may, you hit a bump in the road and you take a wrong turn and you have to. And I think I talk to, business owners all the time, and they say things like Bill and Bennett Camarda, they're like, well, 50% of the time if you get it right. And I'm like, 50% of the time? That's like really low if you get it right. So I would say hiring is the hardest thing in building your team.
Yeah. Speaking of Bill and Bennett, who own Limitless Fitness, you have a partnership with them, right?
Yeah.
Take me inside that.
So I work out with them, first of all. I love them.
People.
They're wonderful.
They're great. Oh, the best.
But they approached me. So I love weightlifting, and it's something I preach all the time. I tell people, and they're like, what should I do about anything? Lift heavy shit. Like, go away and lift shit. Because as we go through menopause and not just, and also men, as they age, we start to lose our muscle. And as somebody that's worked in general practice for my entire career, I spent most of my time caring for older adults. And older adults are not very well. They fall, they break things, they have frailty. And that's how they end up in nursing homes with loss of independence. And it's a very small thing that we could do to actually improve that long term is to not just exercise, but lift heavy weights and build muscle. So they, it's something that I had been talking about on social media. And then they reached out to me and said, hey, do you know, come and see us. And we started to talk. And so we have a partnership with them in that our kind of highest level of membership, they get access to Limitless Fitness. And so they get like a free, what's the word I'm looking for? They get like a free assessment and then they get founders rates with them.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Very cool. It's not a better dream team than that you could partner with. All right. So things are taking off around here. You're seeing a bunch of women. What is the clientele like? Who are the kinds of women that are coming to see you?
So I would say initially it was women that were either late perimenopause, menopause, that were not on any treatment. That was when I started. So that's 2.5 years ago now. So, nobody was on hormone therapy. But what I'm seeing now is that women are coming to me that are on hormone therapy, but they're not optimized. So they're like, okay, I went to my gynecologist and she put me on a patch, but I still don't feel great. And what they need is a little bit more of a more well-rounded approach to what we're doing to make sure that we're addressing their movement and their diet and their, what is their bone density and what's their stress level? Are they sleeping? And so that's what I'm seeing now. I'm seeing women that are coming to me. They're like, I tried this and I don't feel as optimized or it's not working or I've had side effects and I need your help. And that's kind of the group that I'm seeing now. And then I'm also now seeing men as well. So I saw 2 new men today. Yeah.
Wow. All right. So a woman comes in here and for the first time, you have your consultation with her. What do you do? Who does she see? Who does she talk to?
Yeah.
What tests are you running?
Yeah.
What's the treatment?
So they see me for an hour. And in that hour, I will take a full history, get to the nub of the problem, like what's happened, what's their medical history, what medications are they on, what have they tried, what's their family history, what's their diet like, I try to like build a picture of their risk from that conversation and what their goals are. And that will vary from person to person. Like, so I've had people that are like, their goals is to be strong. And I have other people that their goal is like, I have no libido and I don't want to lose my husband. I feel like I am. That's my goal. Like, I need to fix this problem. And so we need to make sure we tailor what we do to make sure that we can deliver their goals. So they do that with me, and then they decide what kind of level of membership or package they'd like to do. And that kind of is a conversation that we had. If I have somebody that comes in and they're really struggling and they really need a lot of input, so we give them a higher level of package, but they end up having labs. So they'll come back and have their labs drawn here. We have a phlebotomist here every other week, and those go to Cleveland Heart Lab. And we do a very extensive workup. So we'll do hormones, but we also do inflammatory markers and metabolic risk markers and nutritional things. We really try to figure out, is there anything else hiding? This is one of the things, it's important, like if a perimenopausal woman comes and sees me and she's fatigued, what's her ferritin? What's her iron? Is she anemic? What's her D? What's her B12? Like, we need to make sure we're not missing anything else that we need to be treating. And that's the reason. So, people are like, will you do my hormones? I do, but I don't really care what they are unless they're super abnormal. What I really want to know is everything else. Then they come in and they have a DEXA scan. So the DEXA scanner, the big machine that you saw, it does 2 things. It does body composition. So it's going to tell us how much muscle you have, how much visceral fat you have, what your fat percentage is. And then we do a bone density scan. So we look at if you have a bone density scan done like with insurance over, at one of the local hospitals, they'll do your lumbar spine and your left hip, which I don't think is enough information. So we do lumbar spine, bilateral hips, and your non-dominant forearm.
Why would you only do one hip?
I don't know. We're not going to talk about that today. But also we do a test called TBS, which is trabecular bone score, which is not something that's routinely done as part of a DEXA scan. So what that does is it analyzes your lumbar spine to try to give us a reading of tensile strength of bone. So what is the quality of the bone, which is a really useful test, and especially in people that are like petite, so they can have low bone density, but actually their TBS is quite good. And sometimes you see the opposite. So they come in, they have their DEXA scan. We also measure various measures of their strength. So we do like a hand strength, grip strength test, and we track that over time. We do blood pressure and heart rate, and we do an EKG. And then they come back and see me, and we go over everything, and we decide what we're going to do. And then they will all see my dietitian, which is really important. One of the things that I have found is that many, many people have abnormal blood sugar, and it's a huge surprise to them.
Diabetic, that's
I know. So we address that, and we Sherry has got tons of experience now dealing with that, or with really high cholesterol.
When you say abnormal blood sugar, what do you mean?
I mean people that are insulin resistant. I'm not talking about type 1 diabetic, although we have diagnosed quite a few type 2 diabetics that didn't even know that they were type 2 diabetic.
Really?
Yeah. And then, or they have nutritional deficiencies, and she'll go through and try to figure out how we can fix that. Or they're osteoporotic, or they have very low muscle mass. How are we going to fix that? We need to make sure we address their diet. So she works with them with that. And then if they see Jill, mind body therapist, they're working on meditation. And usually it's very outcome related. So it's like if the sleep was a big issue, she'll work on that with them. If, anxiety is a big issue, she'll work on that. If relationship is a big issue, she'll work on that. So it kind of depends on how they present, what the issues are. And what we're trying to do is set people up for success, right? Where, we want to give them a lot of care up front so that we teach them a lot of things up front. And then, at the end of that, they can take that to their gynecologist or their PCP if they want to continue their care that way. But we've kind of set them up for success.
This is a comprehensive level of care that I've never really heard of anything like this.
It is a comprehensive level. Wow. That's what I wanted to do.
Yeah.
And, when I think back to my primary care days, people would come and see me and I'd be like, I'd really love you to see a dietitian. And I'm like, where would I send you? Nothing's covered. You know what I mean? And then, I'd really love you to see a therapist. Just can't get at, and you're trying to piecemeal this care together, and it's never covered, and it's just smoke and mirrors, and you never know what you're going to get for a bill. What I wanted to deliver. I wanted to tell them what they were going to get, and I wanted that to be a fee, and that was the fee associated with it. There's no surprise billing. You know exactly what you're going to get up front and all the care that you're going to get up front with no extra charges. That was the goal.
So if someone wants to come see you or your team or your team, what is the process for making that happen?
So you could call. So Ella's up front. You can give us a call and she'll make an appointment and she'll walk you through all the options. Or you can do it right online. It's super easy on my website, lifestylesbynoor.com. Hit the make an appointment button and you can go from there.
Are you always taking new patients?
I'm open to new patients. It's a little hairy right now. We're super busy because I've been away a little bit. My son is in Florida, but I'm trying to add some virtual time so that we can get people in and seen. I've toyed with not taking any more new patients because we are very busy.
Yeah.
But then people need care.
People do need care.
I'm not prepared to do that yet.
Far cry from your 7-minute consultations back in the day. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
But that set me up for this,
Yeah.
So I've seen so much pathology, right? Because I've seen so many patients. It's like that 10,000 hour thing. The more numbers you see, the better you get. And I've seen so many patients that I, have a width and breadth of knowledge as a result of that I think is part of what makes me the clinician that I am.
Mm-hmm. You said that you now are accepting men.
I am.
Why
yes.
did you want to do
because
that?
they were calling.
Really?
They were calling. They were, husbands of so-and-so. But then we had people calling. They were like, how can I get in? And when can I get in? And, at first we put them off and said, oh, no, she's not taking men. And then we said, okay, maybe she'll take men in 6 months. And not because I didn't want to, just because I was just bugged. I was seeing I'm so busy. And eventually I was like, you know what? I'm a family physician. I've treated men all my entire career. So we were like, okay, bring it on. Let's do it.
And what are men calling about?
Lots of things, diabetes, difficulty managing their blood sugars, concern about their cardiac risk. Maybe his dad had died of heart disease and doesn't want that for himself. Maybe, there's a fatigue issue. Maybe he has low testosterone. Maybe he has a weight issue. Maybe his blood pressure is uncontrolled. Everything and anything.
And you deal exclusively with people in midlife?
So mostly I do see younger adults, and usually that's because I've been asked specifically, like somebody has said, my 17-year-old, can you just help us figure this out? And I will, but it's not my wheelhouse really. I mean, I've seen patients of all ages, but what we do here is more geared to kind of like 30 and older.
30 and older, that's your midlife definition.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. On the subject of men, for the because I'm sure you've had so many conversations with women here that are outside of health and more so in the relationships. What would you advise the men in a woman's life who's going through these things? How can they help them? How can they be supportive in those times?
I would say be patient. I would say it's not about you. So a lot of times, especially around libido, they take it very personally. But I can literally tell you, having no libido in perimenopause and menopause, it's like, I would rather dig a grave than have sex. And it's not about anybody. It's just such complete lack of desire. And it's not about a person, or it's just not working, right? So not taking it personally, being patient, and also reading, educating yourself. So, the book I just mentioned, Estrogen Matters, all men should read that book as well.
Okay.
You need to know, right? You need to understand what's happening biologically, because otherwise, how can you help anybody? And then, finding out what resources are available and helping her. If she's so underwater that she's not sleeping and, she's not going to think clearly, like, I need to get myself help. But you can. And we do. We have husbands that call here and make appointments for their wives and say, I think she really needs your help. And, that's a great gift.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
What's on the horizon for Lifestyles by Noor? What's in the works? Tell me about some of the big visions, the things, that you're thinking about for 1 year, 3 year, 5 years down the line?
So we are in the process of moving this practice into another space. So we are in the process of building out a new space at the One Hampton Road location, which is the old courthouse, which is where the Access Sports building is. In Exeter, and we're going to be around to the back of the building. We've got a beautiful space that's being built out right now. Really excited about that. We've completely outgrown this space. And in order to deliver the care that I want for the number of patients that I want, we need to be in a bigger space. Also, one of my visions, and when I started all of this, was to have a community space that we could have, lunch and learns, or we could have group meditation, or we could do, yoga, or drop in this or drop in that. And we've never really found a space that suits us. So we're building that space. It's a big, beautiful 3-aspect room that's we're going to be able to have all of those things, because I want to build a community. I want my members to see that you're part of a community. You get care, you get, dietitian, you get all this help, but also all these other people are here with you. And I wanted to make sure that people felt that.
Yeah. Why is that aspect of it important to you?
Because community is so important. Because, we know, for example, one of the biggest factors of longevity and living well is community, and having people, and having a support system. And, we talked about this before. We're living in an epidemic of loneliness. People are together, but not. And there are moms out there and women out there and men out there that feel like they have nobody to call. And if we could find a way to give them people to call, to give them a safe space to form those relationships, then I think we've done our job.
Yeah, I absolutely love that. Then what about you personally? I know you've got some things in the works.
Yeah. So with the kind of unexpected growth of my social media, and
yeah, you've taken off.
I know.
When I looked today, I think the day we're speaking, 124,000 followers on Instagram. I feel like the last time I looked, you were maybe in like 50 to 60 range.
Yeah, it's been wild. And, I get people reaching out to me all the time on Instagram, and they have questions, and so I'm in the process of building a personal brand with a website. So the website is drnoorwellness.com, and I want to build a newsletter there, and maybe some sort of kind of forum community that we could have, that people could be maybe members of. Maybe they can't get to me here, but they would have access to maybe videos and things like that, and educational tools. And also I would love to do retreats. That's something that I would love to do. And then I've taken on some speaking engagements, so building out that. And then I'm working on a very curated line of products called Dr. Noor Essentials. And what it is, it's simple things that I love, that I use, and that I wanted to bring to my followers, to my patients, to my audience.
Okay. Like what kinds of things?
So like maybe some skincare, maybe some kitchen things.
Okay. Some kitchen things. Ooh, fun.
I know.
Cool. So a lot of the entrepreneurs I've talked to on the show, it's been a common refrain for them that as their business really picks up, the first thing that goes for them is their health and wellness practices. They cut their workouts out, or they're doing takeout meals all the time, et cetera, et cetera. Your business literally is to teach people how to be healthy. But I imagine it's pretty difficult to upkeep with all of your own health and wellness practices. So I'm just very curious, what are your daily routines?
Yeah. So I work out at Limitless. I also work out at home. One of my goals is to really find, build, and stick to a meditation practice. I'm very stop-start with that. So I will start, and then I'm like getting into a group, and then it falls away. So I need to figure that out, and when that would fit in. That's something that's definitely a goal of mine. I love to cook. We very rarely get takeout. It's just not something like my kids don't know what takeout is. I've never done DoorDash ever in my life ever.
Yeah, I think I've only done it once.
Yeah.
I don't understand it.
I love to cook. So we're pretty good about that. My husband, he'll help. We have we'll kind of lay out a bit of a plan. So from the food perspective, I think I have a handle on that. From the workout perspective, I think I have a handle on that. But the thing that gets me is the meditation. And just my stress management practices, I think. And one of the problems with that is my phone. And not just, obviously people want me all the time, right? So whether it's patients, whether it's my staff, whether it's my kids, whether it's my, my parents, my extended family, my friends, which is, people want access to me and I let them have access to me. And then we've got social media and, being on Instagram and being on TikTok. And then you're like, oh my God, I haven't posted, should I post? So, my phone, I think, is the biggest barrier to my health and wellness right now. And when my husband is around and at home, I am very good about putting away my phone and he'll encourage me to do so. So in the evening, I'll just like put it in the kitchen and leave it there. But when he's not around, I have a tendency to just like be on my phone.
Yeah. I mean, it's so hard not to. I mean, my phone is my business as well. I'm with you. Like when I'm with people, I am with people. The phone's away. I'm completely present. But the second they're not, like it's just like every 10 minutes, they're like,
then you're working, right? Then you're responding to emails.
Yes, exactly.
And then you're responding to DMs.
And I'm like, how did I get here? I didn't mean to do this. I forgot why I even reached for it.
Hole.
It's crazy. Yeah. All right. So we both have to work on that.
We do.
And we both have to work on having a consistent meditation practice because I'm with you. It's hard to sustain.
Mm-hmm.
So Dr. Noor, thank you so much. Come check her out here in Exeter. She's doing amazing work for women and now men, which is incredible. Dr. Noor, thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. It was great.
That's Dr. Noor Al-Humaidhi of Lifestyles by Noor in Exeter. To stay up to date with everything happening in her world, you can follow her on Instagram at AskDrNoor or visit her website, lifestylesbynoor.com. The 10th Seacoast Stories Dinner Club is going down this Wednesday in Dover. We have nearly 100 of you signed up for it, which is incredible, and I cannot wait to see you there. If you aren't making it this time, I'm happy to announce that on Friday, April 3rd, we're bringing Dinner Club to Amesbury, Massachusetts for the first time. I've spent very little time in Amesbury, but that needs to change. To join me for a big party on April 3rd, just sign up by visiting the dinner link in the show notes. I'll be back next Monday with another conversation featuring a big-time mover and shaker in the area. But for now, thank you, Jennifer Wilder, Budget Blinds, and Ash Alchemy for supporting this show. And thanks to all of you for listening and for believing in our mission here at Seacoast Stories. Have a great week. I'll talk to you soon. But until then, live free or die.